So we're going to talk about programming a Dyna 2000i ignition module or a Ultima ignition module uh, for a Sportster or any application that uses these nose cone ignition modules. So the first thing you're going to have to do is go to dynaonline.com/downloads and download the Curve Maker software. So right here for Harley Davidson, click download, save it, uh, unzip it, and install it. I've already got it installed. It's called Dyna 2000i in the start menu, and I'll start up this Curve Maker software. The config page, you can select the COM ports. I don't have anything connected currently, but I'll show you how to connect your ignition module without having to buy their $100 cable in order to program the curve. If you go to Hammer's YouTube page, they have one page where they do static timing of the nose cone ignition module, and they talk a bit about the curves. So I could probably pull up the Dyna 2000i manual, and they have the curves listed in their manual here. So Hammer will recommend curve 4 here because it has the least aggressive curve, and this has a max advance of 30 degrees right there. Hammer recommends a max advance of 28 degrees, which is a little bit less. And in their video, they rotate the timing module to retard the timing by 2 degrees. You can get like a degree wheel that kind of shows you how far you need to rotate it, that sort of thing, but they kind of go over that procedure. For me, I don't want to mess with the timing. I just want to leave it in its default top dead center configuration and program it instead to have a max advance of 28 degrees versus having to manually time it like that. And another problem that I have is I don't have a Dyna 2000i in my bike. I have an Ultima ignition module manual. And, they're virtually identical, but they do have different curves. So I'm currently on curve 1 with my stock 883. Curve 4 is the least aggressive, as we'll see here. And so here's our curves. And if you overlay these with the Dyna ones, maybe I can get one on the left, one on the right, you'll see that really all of these come up higher early on than most of these guys. Essentially, you can program both of these, so you can program using the same software these curves on the Ultima Ignition, which I will do, and you can also just program the Ultima curves as well using the software. But those are the two curves available. And in the software here, it's a little Java application. You can load the curves, and traditional curve 4, if you look at this one and compare it to curve 4 here, hey, that is curve 4, right? So that is essentially the same curve. It maxes out at 30 degrees advance, and it has the midpoints. You could look at the graph and like sort of pick out values manually, and I did that before, and I was pretty close. I think I probably had like 8 instead of 7 or something, but I was pretty spot on. But you'll notice there's two curves. There's one when the VOES, the dashed one, is activated. So that's at partial throttle, it says, versus wide open throttle. So when you have low vacuum, it'll use that curve. But that also has a max of 30, which we don't want. But essentially, you go in here, everywhere it says 30, change to 28, as recommended by Hammer. And same thing over here, 30 to 28. And, kind of subjective, but since he manually timed everything down 2 degrees, you could come in here and knock these down 2 degrees. I guess I will. That should always be 1 at the beginning. So then you can save your curve. So I've already saved one as hammer, but I'll save over it again just because I lowered those guys. I guess I could lower that by 2 as well. So that'd be an 8. So let's save one more time. Under hammer curve. Okay. So you have to have a regular COM port. So they make USB devices that'll give you a COM port. So you'll need one of those. There's an adapter that I have, which I will pull up here in a second, that I bought. I'll probably edit this so you don't see my Amazon purchase history or my login account information. Maybe do like a blur effect. Let's see if I can do that. But this guy, I purchased $8, and with this and a USB DB9, or let's do USB serial adapter, one of these, $10. I think all of these will work. So there you go. One of those guys. You will be able to use the software to program the curves. So on this diagnostics page, you can hit download to be sure that you're connected and working. It should eventually say, successfully downloaded, and you'll see the RPM limit go to 6,000 if it's on default. You can disable the switches, which I think if you program a custom curve, it will. But yeah, so essentially load the curve here, load curve 4, put everything on 28, and knock 2 off of everything else. Save your curve just so you have it. I go bind hammer. And if you make changes here, you can hit update curve and it'll change the values. But you can see instead of 30, it shows 28 there. And then send curves. You can hit send right there, and that'll send it to the ignition module, and it should tell you success. Another thing people commonly change is this dead revs for kickstarts. So if you have a kickstart bike, you don't want to have to kick it over 3 times before it actually sparks. So you can change that. I'm not sure if it's 1 or 0 that you set it to, but I'm sure that's readily available online, that sort of thing. About page doesn't have too much. Diagnostics, that's where we downloaded things. Looks like you can reset some of the settings, so it'll tell you how many times you started the bike, that sort of thing. And the config page doesn't have too much other than selecting the COM port. Some people say that auto detect doesn't work, so manually check that. You can go to devices, and in devices you can see COM ports. So I have some virtual COM ports for other reasons. I don't have my USB device on this computer, but I figure step through the software and kind of show you what I'm talking about. But if you look at the Dyna 2000i programming cable, they sell it. I like JP Cycle, so we'll pull up their page. But you see a 9-volt connector, a DB9, purple, green, white. The black will be in the connector there. But in the software, that's the same stuff we downloaded. But $150. I'm like, that's a lot of money for something that can be done cheaper. So here, $10 for one of these adapters. I haven't tried this one, but I'm assuming it should work. If not, you can always return it, try a different brand. And the other thing you need is this little adapter, which I'll show you how to use here in a moment. Pretty much, you have pin 2 is RX, pin 3 is TX, and pin 5 is ground. So you'll need those 3 slots there to be able to connect things, which I'll show you. And download the software, run the software, go to the set your COM port here, try to download, be sure the download works. once your download's working pretty good, load up your curve, change your timing, and then hit send curves, and you'll be in business. I would probably go ahead and also set your switches to be the curve closest. I'm not sure if these will ever forget their settings, but if if it fails to load for whatever reason, it's probably safer to have the switches in a good position. That way it doesn't jump to, a 35-degree advance, that sort of thing.
I have a USB to serial adapter. It's a DB9 connector, but this is an old one. I wouldn't recommend this one, but you should be able to find just a USB device that's like that just gets you a DB9 connector. This little breakout board is on Amazon. I think it's like $8, $9, something like that. I forget. But Purple Wire is, you can see there, I'm gonna try to focus. Well, you have to take my word for it, I suppose, but purple is TX, green is RX, and that's pin 2 and 3, and you need a ground. So I'm powering this all with a 9-volt battery. White wire is your positive, so you connect that to the positive side of your 9-volt. Ground is the body of the ignition module, so that's going to the negative side of your battery, as well as a ground on here that goes to the negative side of the battery. So once again, TX is purple, RX is green, ground is negative to battery and the frame, and that's about it. So essentially this yellow wire goes to the battery, this yellow wire goes to the battery, the negative side, you can see the two yellows there, and the red goes to white. And plug it in with a DB9, just a regular one. At first I was trying a 5-volt one, but it's just a regular old DB9 COM port. But you can see I got diagnostic download, or diagnostic data downloaded. So that means the Curve Maker software is working. But you'll notice that the green light will turn on whenever you have the programmer connected right. So I just disconnected it. See, normally the red light's on. So I'm connecting my power. We got a red light. I'll connect my ground again, and then we'll get the green light. And that means it knows that it's connected to a computer, essentially. Okie doke. So I have a battery connected to my bike, which powers on the ignition module through the 9 volts versus through the bike battery. Plugging it into my computer now. Trying to be delicate so I don't knock things loose. Get the software going. Okay, so I'll connect power. You should see the green and red lights come on. I could probably disconnect the USB to toggle the green lights, theoretically. But okay, I got the green light. If I disconnect here, we lose the green light, which is expected. Typically we'd have the red light as well, but I'm not going to fight it too much. I could disconnect this, unplug the battery like I did before. Maybe I'll test that after it works. But from my perspective, I just want stuff to work. Diagnostic data downloaded. Hallelujah. I have 73 starts. I'm going to print screen on that. Oh, I could probably pull you over here since you saw that enough. Hopefully you can see my computer here. Let me maximize. So I'm just hitting 28 on the curve for that. Partial 1, 5, 14, 23, 28. Oh, so you can see that. 28, 28, 28, 28, 28, 28. Okay. So 1, 5, 14, 23, 28. All that. I'm going to leave the RPM limit alone for now. Always do this again later. Sending curves. Curve sent successfully. So I've been programmed, and I'll show you my diagnostic page. Hopefully you can see that. Let me pull this up, but do it like that. So I have 73 starts, not many hours, that sort of thing. Only 21 hours of operating time since last year, which isn't a lot. My RPM ranges, that's interesting. So I'm mostly at 5 to 5,500. Probably highway riding, that sort of thing. Config, timing. So this is a curve I just put on. 28. That, and I'll hit send curve again, because why not? Send curves. Curve sent successfully. So there you go. My hobbled solution. Oh, I got McF coming up over here. Works. So I'm on dual fire. So if your coil has 3 fire, it'll have 3 wires on it versus 2 wires. Not spark plugs, but the smaller wires, the smaller gauge ones. I left at 5,500 and 3 dead revs. And yeah, so I've been programmed. I'll show you my setup again. So over here, we have BOES right there, which is a red alligator clip. It goes to pin 3. Pin 2 is green, which goes to the green wire, which is the RPM slash, yeah, I guess, what do they call it? Tachometer. That's the word I'm looking for. White is power, so power goes to the battery, which goes to the white wire of the ignition. So this wiring harness up here is pretty much the ignition. I run it uncut without using the factory wires at all. I'm grounding it just to the timing cover screw down there, which goes to my little brown or black cable there, as well as the yellow, which goes to battery. So you could run it off your vehicle battery, off the motorcycle battery, but you'd have to get it ground to the frame or the negative terminal of the battery. Normally I go by the spark plugs because that's a pretty good spot to get a ground, but you know, running off a 9-volt works as well. But okay, I've been programmed, so later today I'm getting the hammer kit, which I just saw FedEx, so he probably just dropped it off. But I still need to kind of clean up my gaskets, and I think under these little upper tappet cover blocks there's an O-ring that needs to get swapped out. So I'll do the prep stuff. But yeah, I've been programmed, so one step closer to running. See you guys in the next one. Bye.